Hi everyone, it's Sandra here. It's September the 5th. This is Gilligan. Now, we left his giant lid off overnight and I was hoping that he would get a light sprinkle on him, and I think he did get a little bit of water, but unfortunately I think the net is that you can see how dry this burlap is. I think the net is that Gilligan started to dry out. So I'll address that at the end of this video. I'm continuing to throw leaves, and I wanted to show you these leaves are following off our maple tree because, you know, we honestly haven't had a lot of rain. But you see the fungal growth right on the leaf, and that's why leaf mold is a fungal process. Leaves have this mold on them, and the worms are really get into that. And the nice thing about picking up these leaves, you know, that fall in August and September, are that they have no slug eggs on them or anything. They basically fall on the ground, and I scoop them up and I'm putting them in here. So they're the purest type of leaf, and I think Gilligan will chow down as soon as this is moist, obviously. And here's another one. But I did give Gilligan a little bit of extra food that I had left over from my other feedings in here near the Starbucks cups a couple of days ago. But so the surface is dry. You can see it's pretty dry here, but underneath I don't have to go down very far at all before I get moist, you know, a moist feeling on my fingers. And obviously the worms have a lot of depth here that they can go down quite deep. What I don't have a lot of is I don't have a lot of room to stir and fluff. Not only are the egg cartons, the 50 egg cartons, just waiting beneath the surface, but there are, you know, there are other obstacles in here. This is a remnant of the compost bag. So there's that shiny compost bag because obviously we put Eat My Shorts in here, and I've already gone past a piece of the shorts material. So this was the last zone that I fed. Now, if we don't find worms in here, then they have, oh, there's one. There's a worm still in the area. But we put in, you know, probably a couple thousand worms into Gilligan. And obviously we haven't found any on the ground, so they haven't been vacating even though we've had the lid off. There's the other Starbucks cup. So the worms have probably gone down to find the coffee grounds that I put in, as well as here's some worms here that were in the feeding area. Yeah, there's a few there. So there are some worms, and obviously I have a little bit of a pit here where I can get in between some egg cartons, you know, and are worms creatures of habit? Well, maybe I will continue to feed in this pit until I know better, until I know that I can dig down deeper and get, and the egg cartons are starting to dissolve. So there's some of the old food with the worms in it. So that's great. So the worms obviously found the food and they are chowing down on it. So I'm digging that up. And there's Gilligan's worms. Beautiful. Look at that beautiful red one there. Just beautiful worms. All right. And here's a piece of Eat My Shorts. And here is, I'll put on it a newish cocoon. All right, so I've dug a little pit here. So I've got some food, and I'm going to give that to these worms. I actually might have to dig a bigger trench because this is a lot of food. There are a lot of worms in here. I also want the moisture from this food. Digging a trench is difficult because of this bin. It is not a bin, it's a giant turtle, is really full. So I'm going to have to be as careful as I can. Use two hands. Oops, see, I'm running into an egg carton or something. I'm just going to try to dig a trench and give them a trench feeding. I know Karen from Decaying Garden, she does this. She trench feeds her worms, and I've always loved that idea of trench feeding. I don't know, is that a new cocoon there? Yes, there's another one. Anyway, so this is a lot of food. but, oh, come on, Gilligan, you can eat it, right? So there we go, the food is in, and I will just mix it up with some of this dry carbon that I had in the area. So let me just take my fork and stir up the food. Now, if you've been watching my channel, I'm doing an experiment on mixing castings with food. This is an idea from Bentley Christie, the compost guy. The idea is that by mixing some active microbes into your food, you not only are speeding the worms getting into the food, because the worms are actually they consume the food, but they are going after the microbes in the food. So you're speeding up that process. But what you're also doing is, by speeding up that process, you are reducing the likelihood that other critters will move in. So for those of you that, are lamenting, why do I always get, this critter or whatever moving into my bin, this might be something else that you can look at, is would, mixing up some inoculated carbon into the food. I'm just using a garden fork because Gilligan's an outdoor bin, but I've done it with my hands plenty of times. So by mixing up the food, are you then speeding the process and keeping the other critters, at bay? You might not be able to keep them out, but you might certainly be able to reduce them in number. All right, so I just am now going to pull the old feeding area that I kind of put on top over onto the top again. There's a big long stalk of something. The worms will get to it. Now this blanket, there's a fragment of the burlap blanket. You can see it's almost looks like a wire mesh, this burlap blanket. It's so dry. And so that's not going to work for Gilligan. We need a nice moist blanket. We know how much the worms loved it. And I actually have a nice surprise for the worms. I have a new blanket. I got these from a friend who gave up doing, I guess, rug or picture hooking with this, and she gave me all this beautiful burlap, so this was one of her patterns. So let me just pause here for a minute, and I'll be right back to moisten it down. All right, so I'm back, and I'm just misting this food container, and I'm going to pour it onto the burlap. So obviously this is a way to say to the worms, hey, you might want to come up here. Nothing wasted. Also stops this stinky container going back in my house. So now I'm just going to mist all over. Like I said, I left the lid off Gilligan last night, and I don't like the fact that the cardboard around the edges and those leaves and the burlap have dried off. I know down deep he's still lovely and moist, but the worms are not going to get into this until this is evenly moist. There we go. So now the burlap is sticking closer to the bedding. If the worms want to climb up through it. It takes a long time to dry out. Those of you who use burlap, it does hold the moisture really well. So I'm confident the next time we come into Gilligan, we will see worms up through the burlap. All right, so expect regular check-ins on Gilligan from now on through the winter. All right, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.